On to the wars. What was the post game show like Saturday?
Well, it was about 6.5 hours long. If that means anything to
Really?
you.
Good
Yeah,
Lord.
and yeah, I kind of bathed in it. And boy, what a frustrating game. Just a really, just a real missed opportunity for Tennessee. It's one thing if you go down there and you play a team that's much better than you, and this is just not a vintage Nick Saban Alabama football team. This is a eminently beatable Alabama team that Tennessee had on the mat, but Joe Milton played literally about as well as he's capable of playing,
Yep.
but they just left so many points on the field in the first half, and then they had this weird thing where they really don't have a tremendous amount of confidence in him, and so they're afraid to do what they want to do, and I don't know, it just kind of all caught up with them at the end.
You've had the sort of the narrative that people have given that Nick Saban made great adjustments at halftime and Heupel didn't. Do you buy that?
I don't know. I mean, look, I'll say this for Alabama. One of the key plays in that game that turned the game was the phantom fair catch call on the Vols, which put the ball on the 4-yard line after Alabama scored.
Right.
So we get the benefit of talking it out, looking at film, all that stuff that you don't get when you're doing the post game show. And so I've got a guy that helps me out named Matt Dixon, who's a real sicko. And I mean that in an endearing way. So he goes back and watches the game, and he notices that the up man on the play, T-Lander, who's going to be a really nice linebacker for the Vols. He's played pretty well so far this year. He says that earlier in the game, T-Lander put his hands up on a kickoff and pointed at a ball that was up in the air. And I think Alabama, now that we've peeled the apple back, you just talk about how they pay attention to everything Saban does.
Yeah.
I think they went over and told the officials, hey, we're getting ready to sky kick this ball. And if he points to it, that should constitute a fair catch. And I think that's exactly what they did. They kicked the ball way up in the air. He pointed to it. They, I think, erroneously um, interpreted that as a fair catch signal, or kind of caught Tennessee in that as a fair catch signal. George, I've been watching football for forever, so have you. Vanderbilt had it called on them earlier in the year, and Tennessee's had it called on them now. I don't know that I've ever seen it called other than that. I don't know if I've ever heard of that.
Yeah, and the disease has spread to Iowa, where the call in that game was
That was
as
brutal.
that was downright awful. Yeah, I don't know what the solution is to that, because you're right. It now has happened 3 or 4 times this year where the team on the bad end really gets hurt by it. So, Tony, you have felt, and I've agreed with you on this, that Tennessee, much as the Phillies seem to own my Bravos a little bit, that Tennessee has owned Kentucky in the past. But boy, this is a tough one. I mean, to get back off the deck against a team that is dying to lay waste to you, this has got some trouble written on it.
It's a Saturday night game. There is no doubt that this is a potentially trouble spot for the Vols if they don't if they don't take care of business. Now, they've got to not give that team life early in that game. Watson told me, our guy Watson Brown, and I think he's right. When a head coach goes out in the press and says the things that coach did about his players to the media, or it was really in frustration on a call-in show, a guy had called in and said, hey, you don't beat anybody that matters to their coach. And he was citing a record back to him, citing his record in these other games other than when they play Little Sisters of the Poor.
Right.
And he shot back with, well, if you bought me the players Georgia has, we would be doing those things. Which George, look, that might be true, right? But that's the wrong answer. His
Yeah, I'm
team a couple
sure.
days later goes out. Yeah, they don't. You don't do that. His team a couple days later went out in Missouri and scored the first 14. Missouri fakes a punt, goes down the field, scores, and then scored to close the game. Just blew him right off the field. And it looked like his team just said, "You know what, Coach? You can kind of have it. It's your world anyway." And I'll be really curious to see what Kentucky team Tennessee gets on Saturday night, because these kids today, it's different than when we were coming up. It just is. They'll check out on you.
Sure. And they have that option to do that now because they've got a transfer portal where, for instance, at practice, if a coach looks at them wrong, they can kind of shoot them the middle finger and say, you know what? Take a look at that portal tomorrow because my name will be on it.
Yeah, and the truth is, if you're a guy that can play, like Kentucky's had a couple of wide receivers this year that are really having tough years. But if you have a couple guys that can play, you're always going to have suitors. You're always even these wide receivers who have had drops this year or trouble with formations, depending on what you want to believe, coming out of the Kentucky camp. But they've just been dreadful offensively. They were supposed to be very good, and they've just been outside of the Florida game. It's the one game all year it clicked for them. They've been dreadful this year on offense, just brutal.
Kelly, describe your attire to Tony because he needs to.
What is it? What does that matter, George? That has nothing to do with anything.
Well, because we've seen you but this is a visual medium, okay? You wear a bunch of junk, for the most part, and now all of a sudden today you're all gussied up.
I mean, I'm not wearing a bunch of junk like you do, like those Knights of the Round Table shirts that you swear up and
No,
down
they
they're
are not.
polos.
They are polos.
I mean, they're 1975 Knights of the Round Table. I mean, get
No, now
over it,
they may
George.
be 75 polos, but they are polos.
Well, I've just got a jacket on, Tony. I've got to go do something for the Boys and Girls Club tonight. I'm interviewing Rob Gronkowski with a question and answer session. So I've got to leave directly after we get off here, and I've got to go to the Boys and Girls Club. So I've got a gray, in which it doesn't help my hair because my hair is all gray as well. So I've got a gray jacket on. I've got a black shirt on, and I mean nothing too over the top. I mean, I understand what George is talking about. He's trying to be funny, but he's not.
Well, you just seem a little too sensitive about it.
No, I'm not sensitive. I'm just saying, like, what does that got to do with me asking questions or with Tony answering? Well, like, what is
Billy,
that?
would you like to chime in here before he says you can't talk?
George, you are King Stir.
Well, hey, Kelly, I was picturing you. I haven't heard your accessories yet, because I was picturing you in a thick gold rope around your neck with tonight's festivities. You have a big old chain around your neck. Come on now.
No, I don't have the thick gold. I don't have the thick gold rope like Roethlisberger used to wear after the games. I don't have those.
I used to love those guys when they would wear. It's like guys, we know you have money. I mean, why don't you just carry a couple $100? Carry like $100 bills around in each hand. We get you have money. You don't have to wear all that bling, but good luck on your deal tonight. Gronk will be a lot of fun. That'll be a lot of fun.
I appreciate it.
Keep that guy in line. Good luck to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. I was telling George today they put us in the round, so I feel like when I went to look at the deal today, I mean they stacked more tables in there when everybody can go around it, and I felt like I was going to a Garth Brooks concert. And I asked the lady, I said, "Are we going to have any stools up there?" And she's like, "No, y'all are going to have to walk around so you can see everybody." And I'm about to tell everybody, I just turned 50. I didn't drink enough water for this. I mean, good gracious, can we get a seat?
Be hydrated.
So you're going to be in the round. So you're going to be going around and round while you're talking. Whoa, boy! Oh, better you than me.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know about that, man. How was the so you said you stayed on the air for 6.5 hours. What was the pulse of the Vol community the other night after the game?
A lot of pain, a lot of anger, but really, I think the biggest emotion is disappointment, because you had an opportunity there to give Alabama their second loss at home. You had an opportunity to beat them for the second straight time. You had an opportunity to move into the upper echelon in the league. And the truth is, on the field, Tennessee and Alabama don't look like they're that far apart. And I think it's really due more to what Alabama doesn't have than what Tennessee does. And it's just that kind of year in the league. I told you guys last week, it looked like Alabama, it looks like Saban is going to take a 9-3 football team to an 11-1 season. And it looks like they're on track to do that. Now, they've got LSU next week there, which will be a real handful. But I wouldn't bet against Saban in that spot, even though LSU probably has a better team.
Yeah, I think so too. That's going to be a tough game for Alabama. So I heard you talking about, and I thought that Alabama made some adjustments. I wasn't in the meeting. I don't know exactly what they did, but it just seemed like in the beginning of the game, they got Joe Milton comfortable. They were laying off the receivers. They were letting them have free releases. And in the second half, it seems like they kind of tightened that up. So what did UT do any differently in the second half?
One thing that they did is in money time, they only ran Joe Milton once in the third quarter in that. And really, that's when the game changed. Now, a lot of that was dependent on the fact that where Tennessee started drives from. I was talking about the drive after Alabama scored, and they played that card where they knew that kid was going to point up in the air at the ball. And Tennessee made the mistake on special teams. But I think at the end of the day, I think Tennessee will look back at that game and go, man, what a missed opportunity. Because Joe Milton, for all of his limitations, and he does have limitations, everybody has limitations, but for all his limitations, gave them about as good a first half as he possibly could. And he was running. And look, he's not the most natural runner in the world, but he was really in the game as a runner. He was a lot more outgoing, ebullient, a lot more engaged in the football game than we've seen him. Because generally he's pretty laid back and passive, Joe. But I think it led to him being better in the game, and they made some big plays down the field in their passing game. Bama just overwhelmed them in the second half. And to me, we've had a lot of discussion about this on the show. I think that the big key play was when Tennessee went forward at midfield instead of punting and playing defense. They gave Alabama a short field. Alabama took that lead, and the game was over. That was that once that occurred.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you. What about what did you think about? They had 2 fourth down calls that they got stopped on both of them. Am I not mistaken by that?
Yeah, and they're both just really dumb, because when you snap a ball to Joe Milton in a shotgun, and you don't have something called, something exotic, something different, and you're counting on him to, it's one thing to call a run on 1st and 10 when you got everybody spread out. It's another thing. Tennessee's problem is they do this bunch formation when they bring all their receivers in. Everybody comes in tight to the line, which advertises this is what we're going to do. And then you run right between the tackles. Joe Milton is not the guy to do that with. He's never going to get the first down. Like, I had people telling me on our Garza Law postgame show, they were saying, well, listen, Josh Heupel's gambling. I said, no. Running that play is not gambling. Running that play is akin to going down to your local convenience store and picking up a lottery ticket that's already scratched off and you know is a loser, and then walking out and paying $5 for it. That's not gambling. That's throwing your money away. And that's what Tennessee did the other day. Look, people can say, well, you go for it, that's who you are. You can't go for it and call that play. That's like giving a score away rather than, hey, you know what? I still have a lead. It's a slight lead. I'm going to punt the ball back to you. I'm going to force you with my great special teams to operate from inside your 5-yard line, because that's probably what Tennessee would have done, pinned them down somewhere deep like they did with A&M. And I'm going to see if we can dial up a pass rush and see if we can't either get 2 points or get a turnover there. Or because, look, this Milrow guy, they let him up. This guy's a ball holder, Kelly. He's a ball holder. And he did it earlier. But they let him get comfortable in the second half. They let Alabama get comfortable in the second half. And you can't give them the ball midfield there. And look, I love Josh Heupel, but you cannot coach those games, those Alabama games, those games with Georgia. You can't, when you have Joe Milton as your quarterback, you can't coach those games like you have Hendon Hooker as your quarterback. It's just not going to work. Look, you can do that with Kentucky and get away with it. But in these signature bigger games, I hope he learns from it, or I hope he has a quarterback that's good enough in the future to overcome that type of decision making. Because unfortunately for him, Joe Milton's just not good enough to spot those points to. He's just not.
This will be my last deal, and I kind of gave it to George and Billy yesterday about, it just seemed like in that game, Alabama has got a tradition, and Nick Saban has brought that to those guys where it doesn't matter where they are in the game, they just believe they're going to win. And it kind of seemed like that happened the other day, and it seems like Tennessee is trying to get there where, back in the day they used to be like that, but they've been through, a decade or 2 decades where they've been kind of so-so, and then they don't really have not eclipsed that, have gone into the middle framework of, hey, we're going to win this game no matter what happens. And I want to see what you think about this. Like Nick Saban always harps about, it's an emotional game, but you can't play it emotional. And it seemed like the other day in that game, when things started going bad, there started to be a lot of chirping from the UT guys. Did you see that?
Chirping in what way?
Just chirping, just talking, just trying to, start things with guys. And I don't think you can, I think Nick Saban has done such a good job with his football team about not getting into those situations, about chirping. Just go ahead. Hey, they beat us on that play, go to the next play. And then, it just seemed like the other day that some of the UT guys got a little bit emotional in that game.
Tennessee's guys on defense do talk. It's kind of part of their personality, whether it's good or bad. I'm with you. It's kind of not, I don't think conducive to the task at hand, but it's sort of their personality. I look at this deal Saturday again as just a real missed opportunity, and I think Tennessee does too. Man, they just had that Alabama team. Kelly is just not an Alabama team of Nick Saban's general vintage, but they did, to your point, when it was winning time, they made every winning play in that game. They just did. You got to tip your cap to that. They made every big play. They made every winning play. They made every defensive play. And I really think at the end of the day, if you go back and look at it, the turnover on Milton led to a scoop and score that's 7. The decision at midfield to give them a touchdown is 7 more. That's basically, those 2 teams look pretty even other than that. And those are 2 mistakes for Tennessee you're just not going to overcome in that spot. You're just not good enough defensively, and you're not good enough offensively to overcome something like that.
If Saban gets this team to 11-1, as great a coach as he has been, this may be the best one-year job he's ever done. This doesn't have an 11-1 feel to it. If he pulls this off, man, more power to him.
I agree with that, George. I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary what he's getting done with this bunch. So you've got Kentucky late night in Lexington Saturday. For people who want to hear your commentary afterwards, how do they do it?
Yes, we fire that thing up over at tclub.team. And I think we're going to have a celebration into the wee small hours of the morning. And I really do believe that Tennessee will emerge victorious in this game. I just think that Kentucky bunch has too many issues and too many problems. And, if it's not for that Vandy transfer, I don't know what they have on offense. Now you guys know he's a nice player.
Yeah.
But the truth is, their wide receivers, and this has happened to Tennessee, when your passing game goes limp, all of a sudden the few chances that get squeezed towards those receivers, they start dropping balls. Everybody starts pressing a little bit, and that's Kentucky's passing game. And then on the other side of things, they haven't been able to get any pressure on opposing quarterbacks. And if they let Joe Milton stand back there and throw the ball, he will make and hit some big pass plays this weekend because you can't give anybody time. And I think he's going to have one of his better games of the year this weekend. That's my prediction. And also, if I were Tennessee, I would start playing this freshman, Nico. I would start playing him a series a game, maybe a series or two per game down the stretch, maybe save the Georgia game. But against everybody else, I'd play him a series or two and start looking ahead with him to 2024.
Excellent point. Tony, good luck tonight. I'm going to be rooting for you.
tclub.team is where you find me. And, my Phillies, geez Louise, guys. I've got a stress headache this big, as they used to say in the old commercial.
Oh, I know the feeling.
See you guys.
Talk to you next week. See you, Tony.
Bye now. Have a great one.